My name is Helena, and my story begins in my third year of university, during a period in my life when I was convinced I understood the world far better than I actually did. I studied psychology, and like many young students who had memorized just enough theories to feel clever, I believed that knowledge and wisdom were the same thing. I walked across campus with a quiet confidence, but it was a confidence built on shallow foundations, the kind that collapses the moment something real challenges it. Everything changed when I joined a course taught by a professor named Dr. Morgan. He was a thin, older man with silver hair that he often pushed back absent-mindedly and quiet eyes that seemed to observe more than most people ever said aloud. He never raised his voice. He didn't need to. Whenever he spoke, the entire classroom fell into a kind of attentive silence, as though all of us instinctively understood that what he was about to say carried weight. On the first day of class, he walked in, placed his notes on the desk with deliberate calm, and asked a single question that instantly unsettled me. What do you think the purpose of education is? Students raised their hands and gave the predictable answers. To get a job, to learn important information, to become independent. Dr. Morgan listened politely, nodding from time to time, and then he gently shook his head. What he said next has stayed with me ever since. The purpose of education, he said, is not to fill your mind with information. The purpose is to train your mind to see. At first, I didn't understand what he meant, but he went on. Knowledge, he explained, is easy to collect. You can fill your shelves with books and your notebooks with definitions, but wisdom, the ability to discern patterns, understand human behavior, and connect ideas with clarity, is far more subtle. Real education begins, he said, when you stop trying to memorize everything and start observing what is actually in front of you. During that semester, his classes felt less like lectures and more like long conversations with someone who had spent a lifetime studying people, not from textbooks alone, but from experience. He brought in stories from his own life, from former students, from strangers he had met on trains or in cafes. He described moments of failure, moments of quiet success, moments of heartbreak, and moments of unexpected kindness. None of the stories were dramatic in a movie-like way, yet each one carried a deeper lesson that revealed itself only if you listened carefully. One story that stayed with me was about a student who had failed his final exam. The student came to Dr. Morgan feeling desperate and ashamed, asking for another chance. Instead of giving him a new test, the professor told him to return in 1 week with an observation. Confused, the student asked what he should observe, and Dr. Morgan simply replied, "Anything. Just watch the world carefully and bring back something that changes the way you think." The student spent the week walking around the city, unsure of what he was supposed to be looking for. He noticed cars, trees, cafes, people rushing around, the usual things one sees but rarely pays attention to. But one evening, he saw an old man feeding pigeons in a park. Children ran around him laughing, and the birds moved in small circles at his feet. The scene was ordinary, almost forgettable, but the student noticed something unexpected. The old man looked completely at peace, as though that small, simple act was enough to fill his life with meaning. When the student returned to class, he told Dr. Morgan about the man. He admitted that he didn't understand why someone could look so calm during such a simple activity. Dr. Morgan smiled and said, "You've learned your lesson." Happiness rarely comes from grand achievements. It often hides in the quiet, fleeting moments most people ignore. That story changed something in me. For years, I had believed that my future happiness depended on big plans and impressive accomplishments. I chased good grades, a good reputation, and a clear path toward a successful career. But I realized, with an uncomfortable jolt, that I had spent almost no time noticing the small, meaningful details of my life. I was always rushing ahead, never slowing down to pay attention to the present. Dr. Morgan challenged us to keep a daily journal, not about our tasks or goals, but about the things we noticed. A stranger holding the door open, the way sunlight reflected off a window, the warmth of tea on a cold morning, a brief moment of gratitude. At first, the exercise felt strange and even pointless, but slowly, it began to train my mind to tune into the world with a new kind of awareness. It was as if I were learning to see in a deeper, more attentive way. Dr. Morgan challenged us to keep a daily journal, not about our tasks or goals, but about the things we noticed. A stranger holding the door open, the way sunlight reflected off a window, the warmth of tea on a cold morning, a brief moment of gratitude. At first, the exercise felt strange and even pointless, but slowly it began to train my mind to tune into the world with a new kind of awareness. It was as if I were learning to see in a deeper, more attentive way. By the end of the semester, I felt like a different person. I started listening to people with more patience instead of planning my response while they were still speaking. I read books more slowly, letting the ideas sink into my mind instead of rushing to finish the chapters. I became more aware of other people's emotions, especially the quiet sadness some of my friends carried behind their jokes. I realized how much of the world I had been missing simply because I was always distracted. Dr. Morgan taught me something that no textbook had ever explained. Intelligence is the ability to solve problems, but wisdom is the ability to understand people. You can be intelligent without being wise, but you cannot be wise without paying attention. Years later, when I became a psychologist myself, I often looked back on that class as the moment my real education began. I could still hear Dr. Morgan's voice in my mind whenever I sat with a patient. Notice what they are not saying. Notice the silence between their words. Notice the emotion behind their eyes. These small details, the ones most people overlook, often reveal the truth. That professor changed my mind, and without meaning to, changed the direction of my entire life. And all he did was teach me how to see.
How much did you understand? Give yourself a number from 1 to 10. If you understood most of it, you can try the next level.